So first, actually, I've got a system overview. Now, the reason that I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the system works and essentially where we get data from is that that's going to be super important in terms of how we decide to optimize our recommendations. If we're collecting, so hey, we're collecting, like you say, article type, we're collecting things like what are shop products, what categories of products there are, Danielle, all sorts of data about sizing, about what color things are, and what types of shoes they are. And that data that we pick up is really going to influence how creative we can be with those optimizations in terms of different tactics. So I will skip through this fairly quickly because I'm sure I've given this to both of you recently. But when shoppers come to your website, we have a JavaScript tag that's essentially on the website. And when your page loads, we can scrape data from it. And that is the beautiful data that we're talking about today and that we can look into using in different ways. We'll see things come up as well about the signals we collect. So generally we talk about if products are browsed, whether they've been carted, whether people have gone to cart pages, and whether people have purchased items. Now this can come into optimizations because we can target each of these differently. So one example we'll get onto later is that we can show what are the most popular products on your website. So we can do that in terms of what's most popular to be purchased, but also what are the most carted items. So we can start getting to different granularities of this data. Obviously, we know what we can do with it, and today we're talking about recommendation smart blocks. So I won't talk you through the whole suite, but that should just give you a bit of context as to where the system is playing a role in terms of that data collection. So the next thing to talk about is our advanced testing and optimization module. So this is something that we launched a beta of it probably about 9 months ago, and now we've done some refinements and added more features in. So today we're talking about optimization in general, and I'll show you which tools are baked into your standard package and which tools are part of the new module. But if anything does interest you, then have a chat to your account manager because we're giving away free trials at the moment. So you can get in on that if we talk about some ideas you'd like to proceed to stick with today. So as part of the module, we have the Optimize Center. So that's going to be your central repository for all your tests. And we'll take a look around there. It is so easy to go in, run tests, look and compare that data. But what is especially important in this module is how we've essentially made testing easier. The journey to optimization can be really tricky. It's really resource intensive. It's not just thinking of the test you want to do. You then have to actually set it up. You have to keep monitoring it. Have you got significant enough results yet? And then once you've actually figured out which one's your winner, compared how does it work with revenue versus order value, all of those different metrics, then you actually have to implement the winner. So it's some of those steps that we've reduced with this module, and that's with two core functions. One of them is about auto ending of tests. So the sort of A/B testing, ABC testing you're used to, you can now select a goal. So whether that's increasing revenue, increasing average order value, improving bounce rates, so several different goals. But you can pick one, and then our system will automatically figure out which one is suiting your goals best and implement that. And you can set up whether that's a date-based test or whether there's a certain number of impressions that you want to see for sort of significance. So that's really leading into the sort of more traditional way of optimizing. So that testing between multiple variables and then putting the winner into play. However, that has some limitations. So let's say you've got, I mean, everyone pretty much does Black Friday, so this is a good example, but you have what, maybe one, two, possibly three crucial email blasts through that time or that period of time on your website during the sale where you don't really have time to test that messaging because by the time you've got enough data, you've seen which one's winning and implemented it, the sale's already finished. So we have a different optimization tool, which is called the multi-arm bandit. It is an industry standard term, as is the octopus you'll see around the system, so do enjoy that. But essentially, what this is doing is, imagine just like an octopus, you can throw lots of bits of content in. It will be checking the effectivity of each. So, towards your goal, how effective is that being? And within, well, we've seen it working within sort of 10 minutes, even depends on you how much traffic you're getting. But really quickly, it can start to see which one's most effective, and will start to display that straight away. So you're not missing out on that time frame of all those people you were sending the, I guess, losing test to. That's already going to start reducing. So that's part of the sort of upfront power of the multi-arm bandit. But it's actually really effective on the other side as well, in that it will keep checking that it's correct. So leaning into those AI mechanisms that we love here at Fresh, and really looking and seeing, okay, we said that content B was working the best. Is that still the case? Or for some reason, does content A now perform better? So if I was to give you, Danielle, I'll give you an example for pavers. So let's say we're setting up two sets of recommendations. One of them is going to be sandals and flip-flops. One of them is going to be Ugg boots and wellies. You could put those into the multi-arm bandit, and what we would expect is that during sort of the spring months, about now, everyone's looking for their summer shoes. People are starting to go on holiday again. We're going to see that that piece of content is going to keep performing really well. But what's going to happen when we get to maybe September? Oh, we tend to have some Indian Septembers, so maybe October now, and that weather starts turning. And what we would see was that our system would start to show the boot version of the content as that starts performing better. So, what you're really doing is you are giving the system the power to show what works best at the time when it does work its best, and it will keep changing. So that's where the two sort of features sit, and where the differences are between them. So I'd summarize, A/B testing is really great if you want to do a sequence of tests. So maybe a lot of the things we're talking today, you'd want to run sort of a program of tests. Or you've got the multi-arm bandit route, which is more about being responsive to changes. Um, I guess another example for multi-arm bandit that I think would be quite interesting. We're seeing it all over the news about the cost of living. So actually, what if we could set up different recommendations with price points? We could set it with a goal of increasing average order value, and then it's always going to be working with the most effective one. So as people's budget drops, we can start to see maybe it show lower priced items, but based on the goal of what's getting you the most, so you wouldn't lose out by sort of dropping those prices. Lots of different ideas, and it's going to be very dependent on, I guess, what you're working with. So I think seasonality is a great one um, that we can look at. The final thing in this module as well is all about how we can report on those tests better. So we can get so far in Fresh Relevance, but it's not going to ever get you the data that you're getting in Google Analytics, all of that external data that Fresh can't see, that you're piping in from your other campaigns, for example. What we can't see is that, I guess, cohesive view of data. So what we've done is we've actually built our system to enhance your Google Analytics data. So we can start sending over what are called events into Google, so that you can see, okay, person X was shown this banner, shown this content, but they didn't interact with it. But you'll still be able to see how that feeds into those conversions and all the other lovely data you look at. So that's just a summary of the new module. Like I said, we'll touch on some of these features. But is there any questions at this point?
All good so far.
Fantastic. Well, let's get on to the exciting stuff that everyone's here for, which is optimizations. Now, before I get started, I've been so excited to run this session because this is where the value is. I'd say out of optimizing anything in Fresh Relevance, recommendations have the most to play with and the most different options to really increase whatever, like I said, whether your goal is probably revenue, but we do have other goals that you can work on as well. But I think this is where you've got the most power to really see those incremental improvements. So we'll start at a basic level with our basic optimizations. And there's things on here that you would expect, and then there's some more technical things that we'll hop into the system for. So the first one is look and feel. Now, we all know how things look impacts people massively. You can change up a color of a button and suddenly it stands out on your page versus being a part of sort of the color schemes. So this is something that's really easy to edit in Fresh, particularly if you're looking at our new smart block flow. We have so many different edit options for the UI. In particular, things you might want to consider looking at would be obviously the color of the buttons, but maybe things like the text on the buttons. So should it be a see more? Do you want to have sort of a buy now button or a more info? So there's lots of different terminology you can use that can obviously have stronger call to actions versus more reserved ones that is about getting information. We might also want to look at things like how many products we're showing. So do we want to show a grid that's 2 by 2, or are we going to show 4 products in one row? Are we going to do 3 products but in a carousel? So that you can really start to look at what does that look and feel of the block do? How does it fit into your website or your emails, depending where you're deploying it? And whether it's going to drive more engagement based on how it looks. The next one is about data sources and fallbacks, and this is where the meaty stuff comes in with Fresh Relevance's recommendations. Data sources allow us to choose how we want to pick our recommendations, and we tend to fall into a few sort of major groups. We have AI recommendations, which is all about looking at a particular person, their affinities, be it to things like price, categories, um, whether it's, any information really based on what we're picking up in the system. And we can start to think about what people might buy based on what we're seeing your website users do. We can also pull up things like most frequently browsed, frequently purchased. So those crowdsourced data sources. And I was working with a client quite recently, and they quite extensively tested a lot of the data sources, and there were some really surprising results in there. So one that really stood out to me was actually they found frequently browsed was more effective than frequently purchased. I would not have expected that. You think that the most purchased products are going to be the ones that get the most engagement, but actually, when they were looking at it, people that were having that browse were, I guess, exposed to more products and then more likely to find something that they want to buy. We've also found that different recommendation data sources can work in differently across different touch points. So what might work on your homepage of your website might not be the same tactic that works on your cart page, or what's in your cart abandonment email might not be the right tactic for what you see on one of your BAU emails, for example. So it's a little bit here about thinking of the context. So what is your overall tactic? What are you trying to achieve? And then what are the different ways of getting there? We can also do fallbacks, and fallbacks are just as important as the primary data source a lot of the time. So whilst we've got that primary data source to optimize, there are others as well, depending how deep you want to go. So you might use an AI data source, so people like you buy. But for all of the unknown people on the website, maybe we want to test whether they see frequently purchased or frequently browsed products. So there's a couple of different levels there. Um, I guess to help this sink in, have you got anything in mind or a set of recommendations or a touch point um, that you'd like to put recommendations in? And we could maybe talk about different tactics you might test. Nope. Okay, I will make some up for you then. I should have thought about this ahead of time, shouldn't I? So let's say we're doing a homepage of your website then, Danielle. So what's going to be more effective there? Showing AI, so showing what we think you'll buy based on your behavior, or actually showing most popular products? It can depend. Some people, it might be one way, some people might be the other, but we can test that and see actually what does serve your audience best. So hey, let's go for a BAU email for you. So again, do we want to look at popular products, or maybe we want to test showing people things that they looked at last time they were on the site? So do we want that familiarity effect, or are we going to go for what's new and hot right now? So really at a high level, those sort of tactics can change. Any questions on that one? Nope. Um, do feel free to reach out after this session once you've had a bit of a think of which bits you might want to optimize, and we can definitely discuss these. There's a lot of different options, so we can definitely help you bubble the most effective ones up to the top of your list. So the third one here is ratings and reviews. So this is part of the social proof module, and it allows you to show, well, the ratings and reviews on a product. But there's a few different options here in terms of what you want to show. So do we want to show just the star rating, or is it important to know how many people delivered that rating? So for me, I shop on Amazon all the time, and if I see a seller that's got 10 reviews, even if they have a perfect 5 star, if they've only got 10, that's not a very strong indicator for me. I'd actually prefer to buy a product that was rated 4.2 stars with 10,000 reviews, because for me, I'd rather the voice of the masses. You hear about, scam reviews and things like that. So, that's how I look at it. But then that's quite a lot of noise, perhaps in your recs, to start adding the number of reviews as well. So again, it's something you can test. One of the other things you can test based on ratings and reviews is we can filter in terms of what products we show. So only show products over 4 stars, for example. But if you tend to have a lot of sort of 4 star products, then maybe you'd want to lower that, or maybe you want to go for 4.5. So there's different ways that you could surface products as well based on rating and reviews. And this is all about finding that sweet spot. So this is our basic optimizations. I'd say those first two, I'd say, are our killer, particularly the data sources. That's where you're going to see that jump in return on the block. And it might be something that actually it's not a simple A/B test. Maybe you want to test between different AI, and then next you test, okay, within the AI, is it people like you buy or people like you browse that's most effective? So like to do a little bit of a pause at this point just to see your thoughts. Are these ideas that you think you might take a look at implementing?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the main things that we want to try focus on now is, I think, I'm not sure if you remember Daisy, but Samir, my manager at the time, we had a discussion about the main thing is to kind of display the correct content of people that may be browsing that content. So obviously we've got cart abandonment. In this case, we might have article abandonment. You can say someone might be reading an article. We have a paywall that restricts them from maybe reading the full article or seeing furthermore after that. So that's something we want to try capture. So if someone's gone onto the website, seen a few articles, we can then retarget them with an email, let them know that there's more relevant content, or maybe finish off reading the article they were reading. So yeah, definitely kind of capturing that would be really key. And again, using data sources to kind of figure out where it might be best to kind of capture them, whether it's something that they've seen on the home page or touch points on wherever they've seen it on the website will definitely be good.
Awesome. How about you, Danielle? Anything screaming at you from this one?
Yeah, definitely. We're going to be looking at doing a lot more tests as so this team's growing. So we're going to be looking at a lot more testing and the different types of testing. So this would be really interesting for us. As you know, we actually have an email team as well that sit right in front of me. And also we were talking about the BAU emails today. So it's all very interesting. I'm interested in the rating and reviews on the social module. Is that a package? Is that an extra? Is the social module extra, or do we already have that in our package?
I can double check for you.
I feel like we have recommended products on our homepage, for instance. So I was just wondering, that would be a really good thing, because obviously on our homepage right now, so it's quite interesting to implement something like that.
Yeah, we see massive improvements. So as part of the social proof module, there's two facets to it. So it's adding the ratings and reviews, but then also things like popularity and urgency messaging. So how many people are browsing now, for example. Or we can pull in stock information, all sorts really. So only 3 left, for example. So yeah, I've just noted that down, and I'll get you some. Well, I'll double check whether you've already got it after the session, and I'll drop you some info. If not, it is a bolt-on module, but I don't think it's a huge one because it kind of feeds into a lot of what you've already got.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Amazing. So we'll go on to our next slide, which is sort of our next level optimization. So we definitely advise getting started with your look and feel and with your data sources and your reviews, because that's going to give you a nice feel for how oh, thank you, Will, little rock star. So yeah, that's where we'd start. Once you've got somewhere with that one, you've got a bit of an idea of what's working best, we can then take it the next level down. So the next one is filter optimization. So when we build recommendations, we have our data sources, which is how we're choosing them, whether it's the AI, the social crowdsourced, for example. But then there's the filtering, which is where we can refine what products we show. Now, I'm actually going to hop into the system here because there's quite a few options that I think will be a bit easier to see if we go in. So if I go to content and smart blocks, we'll see our recommendations as our first tab. Just going to hop into something that already exists. So let's go into, hold on, let's go into this one. Sorry, my computer's having a little bit of a paddy right now. If in doubt, go home, hey. So we're going to try that again. Go to content and smart blocks. Let's hop into this one. So I can hit on a block, and if I just go into edit, we'll be able to see those settings. So We did just speak about data sources, so whilst we're in here, I will show you. So on our data source tab here, it's just simply a case of picking the source you want to test from the drop down. But when we go to filtering, we have a lot of different options of things that we can try. And this is sort of an extra layer of things that we could optimize. So you could optimize changes in filters, or you could optimize whether you have a filter or don't have one. So if I just open up, I'll just suggest a few things that I think are definitely worth trying. One of them is your best tag value filter. So what this best tag value does is it looks through all the different tags or categories in that case. So hey, one of your categories or tag values would be article versus shop. For example, Danielle, you're going to have things like flats, heels, boots, for example. And what we can do is watch different customers and then look at what their favorite tag, what their best tag is. So what's their, I guess, category affinity. So we can have different variables in here to decide how this works. So you might want to try having something generic without this filter, or you might, and then you could try it versus having this filter, which will then only show products from that person's affinity. So a good example here might be in a BAU email, you could test between frequently browsed or frequently purchased, versus frequently purchased, but limited to someone's favorite category. So you've kind of got almost an exposure versus personalization test going on there. You could actually try testing different things even within this filter as well. So for one, maybe we want to only show products in the one best category. So heels, for example, Danielle, or we could say 3. So that might cover heels, platforms and flip-flops. So then we've got a bit more breadth. So how much breadth feels right for your customers, but while still surfacing what's most relevant and personal for them? Again, how we pick this data. So by default, it looks at browse, but actually purchase could be a good one. Or I guess, so Habe, I think it'd be browsed for you if we're talking about articles, because I don't think they're ever technically purchased, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it will most likely just be whether they've gone on it, had a look, and from there whether they subscribed or not. But that's something that will be dealt with quite later on for the cycle.
Perfect. But yeah, for Danielle, that this could be a good one. I guess we're asking, is it more important what someone's looking at the moment or what they've purchased in the past? We can get even more specific with this as well. So look within a certain tag group. So Danielle, I know you have variants. So I think you pick up colors of shoes on the website. So you could test between having just 3 best categories, or actually, do you want to show people the 3 best colors? So within this tag group, you could pick color, and then it would say pick the 3 best colors for this person. Will is very timely writing an article up about this filter, actually, so we can send you some more information about how this works. But this is probably my number 1 filter. So if you're looking at using anything in here, this is the one that I would say is golden, because it's going to personalize to each customer individually, but without you having to build out different blocks to say, for this person, show this, for this person, show that. Another one that's good to try is this average product price. So here we're looking at price affinity, and we're saying that we can use, maybe we want to show products within 20% of what that 20% price of what that customer normally looks at. So we could test, actually, does showing people products within their price range give you a more effective outcome there? And then if I was going to pick one more, because we are still moving through time. One of them I think is excluding recently recommended. So what we can do, and recent activity as well, we can exclude based on each individual, whether they have seen different blocks, whether they have purchased items. So we can make sure that they're seeing fresh content. So if we've already recommended the same pair of stilettos to Will, because obviously that would be his affinity, then do we want to still show those again? Probably not, because he's had quite a few times, but actually, could it just be that Will really needs a bit more convincing to buy them and trundle around his living room wearing them? Okay, I'm going to give you a fourth, actually. Price affinity predictors, probably my favorite. Danielle, this is amazing on homepages of websites. And what we can do is we can make a scarily good guess about whether people will buy items at a low, medium, or high price point based. We're talking about someone completely fresh to the website we've never seen before, but we can glean a fair bit about who that person is. I'm guessing it's going to be things like what device they're using. People maybe with older devices are going to be a lower price affinity than those with the brand new iPhone. So there's little mechanisms like that that we can read into. A lot more that the tech team won't tell me about. But that's something else that you could try. Is it more effective to have this or not? So then the final one on the next level is all about your crowdsourced data sources. So when we're talking about your most popular products, the most purchased products, for example, we can actually change different time periods around that. So what's more effective? What's the most popular as of the last 24 hours, or what's been most popular over the last 30 days? Because those might be quite different answers, particularly with British weather being the way it is. I know that I've had to go out and last minute buy some shoes because I thought it was going to be nice and sunny, and then it's just nothing but rain. So I guess particularly for you, Danielle, that what's popular can change quite quickly based on sort of the environment. So maybe a shorter window would be more effective for you. So Habe, I imagine affinities to sports are fairly robust. So you're not going to have someone that's that suddenly moves across to a different sport. But also, I guess when different races are on, then you might actually find that there is more popularity around F1 products when there's been a race that weekend, but then the weekend when it's MotoGP racing, and actually you see the switch there. So that's something you can have a play around with. We'll go back in a minute and I'll show you where that option sits. So yeah, definitely getting a little more in depth there. Any questions? Any interest, let's say? I've got some nice nods. This makes me happy.
Everything sounds good, to be fair. This is pretty much all we discuss internally anyway. I think it's just a matter of putting it into implementation, I guess.
Fab. Danielle, some nods from your way as well there. Yeah, that's really exciting, and I'm really excited about that homepage thing. It does sound scary. Yeah, this all makes sense. It's again just us having a go. I think that's the key here. But yeah, all of that.
And we do have a blog so I wrote a blog for each of our optimization sessions. So what you'll see is that there's actually a blog with some screenshots and some more information around each of them and suggestions that we'll send over at the end of this session as well.
Oh, thanks.
So going on to our final piece, which is our advanced optimizations. So these are things that are probably a little bit trickier to do in the system. They're absolutely possible either through yourself or through services work. But there are some really, really important and great things to test here. So the first one is advanced templating, and this really will come into our services team because they have to do some code wizardry. But there's some amazing templates that we've been able to do. We've just released it today, actually, so I can talk about it. But we've got a case study with FFX, and what we've been able to build is like a bundle smart block. So rather than just showing recommendations, it's built so actually they can add multiple products into the cart at once. And that has, I think it's about tripled, if not quadrupled, the amount of revenue that was coming through that smart block just by changing the template so that you can cart more items at once. That was really the only change there. but it's had an amazing effect. We can do all sorts of clever things. I saw an example the other day. Yeah, so whether you want to show your recommendations in a popover versus on page, for example, because a popover really makes them stand out. So I think it was Dunelm the other day. When I carted an item, it popped up and said, do you want to, normally people buy these as well. Do you want to add them to your cart? And just that path to purchase became so quick and easy. But if that block of recommendations sat beneath the product image, I probably wouldn't have even looked at it, but they had me. I also did a cart abandon, so half of one and six of the other, or whatever the phrase is. But you know, it's just an example of how we show those templates and how we show those recommendations can make a big difference. The beauty with services as well is that any idea you have, we can have a good go at. Obviously, we'll scope it out ahead of time, but you're not limited to the templates you see in our system. We've built out all sorts of wizardry for various clients. So if there is something in particular you want to do, I'll send you the FX case study as well, so you can see how awesome that is. But yeah, anything your mind can think of, we can definitely add that in. It could be something as simple as using a carousel over using a static set of recommendations. So it could be as simple as that, going right to the bespoke bulk adding to cart, for example. The next one is social proof. So Danielle, just what I was mentioning in terms of the messaging that says how popular a product is. So 24 people are browsing this now. So the way that our social proof works is that you can actually set up thresholds for when you want different messaging to show. So by default, I think we just have the values of 5. So if 5 people or more have bought a product, we'll show the messaging 5 people have bought. Now, Danielle, let's think about the number of people going through the Pavers website. If we had a threshold as low as 5 purchases, we're probably going to see some pretty big numbers across every single product. So what this is about is optimizing those thresholds. So actually, should it be 100 purchases for us to show that purchase messaging? And then do we show nothing on the others, or do we want to show carted, or do we want to show browsed? So there's 3 types of messaging plus no messaging, plus you can do thresholds on each of them. So there is a lot you can definitely test and refine there. For me in social proof, it's all about making sure that it's on enough products, but not all of them, and hitting that sweet spot is where this comes in. And then the final one is affinity optimization. And this comes right back to that first slide when we were talking about the data we were picking up from your system. What type of affinity is strongest? So Danielle, for you, is it the type of shoe, or is it the colour, or is it, well, we can imagine sizing's a pretty strong affinity across the board, but outside of that, I don't know, is there people, I know for me, I always have to go for a strapped shoe because I'll fall over regardless of what I put on my feet, but if it's got a possibility of falling off, then I'm definitely going to trip over. So for me, that's my most important affinity. And actually, you could suggest probably quite a few different types of shoes that I'd be interested in, but there's some things that are more important than others. So Habe, let's think for you. So obviously, we've got the sort of high level categorization of types of article, but I guess sport is a good one. You're going to have that affinity there, but does it get deeper than that? So are people are people specifically interested in results, or are they looking at the race gossip, or is it more about the pre-event than the event itself, or are they looking at articles about historic races? So, there's different types of affinities there that you might want to look at. And yeah, essentially, what is the most important? And the only way to truly know that is to test. So that is our final one. Again, the affinity optimization is going to change so much based on what data you have. So if you do want to reach out then we can definitely have a look through your individual accounts and come up with what we think might be some of your top tests to do. And so we definitely got a lot more in depth on that one. Like I said, we can help you out with any of these, but anything that seemed particularly interesting to either of you on this one?
I think the affinity optimization is definitely going to help, specifically to pick out what people are the most interested in or what kind of helps them make a decision. But going back to the previous one, the best tag, I feel like that definitely will also help us quite a lot, because we were having an internal conversation about how we can use the best tag to, again, show the most relevant articles specifically to people that may not necessarily be a subscriber but are still interested in viewing something. So yeah, I think our main goal right now is to kind of capture all those readers that are not subscribers yet, and maybe the best tag might be definitely a good way of kind of capturing those people.
Absolutely. I've actually got a good example of affinity optimization for you. Against all your articles, I notice we're picking up the author. So, for example, you might want to test, do people have a particular affinity to that author, or is it the topic they're writing about? So that could be a nice one for you to test there.
Definitely. That's actually a good one, really good one, actually, to be fair.
Light bulb moment.
Yeah, gonna note that down.
You just inspire me. You can steal it as your own as well. Tell Zamir it was all you. Fantastic. So from here, I just want to hop back into the system and we can just do a little bit of signposting to things that will help you actually implement these optimizations. You're going to be very happy to see how quick this is. You can set up a lot of optimizations very quickly, and particularly with recommendations. So if I just go back to that main recommendations landing page as well. So let's assume at this point in time, we have our first piece of content that we want to test. So let's say we're going to test 2 different data sources, or let's say 2 different button colors, actually. That's a nice, easy one to start with. So let's pretend, and I would not say that these are particular good examples of styling. This very green, that's a me for sure. So when you do, this one's prettier, we'll go for that one. So when I click on a block, what you can see is this lovely duplicate button. So it looks like 2 pieces of paper. And what that's going to do is create an exact copy of what you already have. So if I call this Fresh Focus. Optimize. So I can then click Save and Edit. And what it's going to have done is, created a carbon copy of that thing, of the one that I was already happy with. So now all I need to do is change that variable that I want to test. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with testing, but generally what you want to do is only change one thing at a time. If you change more things, then it's tricky to know what change has had what impact. So we would recommend the one. So let's say we've got these black buttons, but I want to have a beautiful green button. So I can just come to the bit in our editor that does colors, and I can say I want it this nice green, and I've changed the wrong one. There we go, let's try this one. Changed it back. Oh, there we go. Oh, fancy. So this is our new template. So I've caught myself out by clicking on something too quickly. But in our new flow, we have the ability to change the button on hover. It is a web-only feature, I'm afraid, but you are able to change that because obviously green and red is great for accessibility. Oh, there it is. Can't see for looking. So hopefully this will be a better example. I obviously didn't make it look the easiest then, but it is 3 clicks once you're in it, and that will have changed, again, the text. But what I can do is then save this. So at this point, you're going to do one of two things depending on where you are at in your journey. If you have a piece of content that's already live that you want to test, then all we need to do is go to the slot that's hosting that. So as a reminder, our slots are how we're showing that information, and then we can decide which piece of content to show within it. So let's say, Danielle, you've already got some recs on your homepage and you want to optimize those. What we need to do is go to content and slots to find the correct slot to then put our test in. If this is a new piece of content we've not deployed yet, then you click save and use and then go to the slot creation process. So let's say this is already something that we have and that we just want to test. What's really nice is that you can have multiple tests in a slot as well. So if you're already using rules to say for new customers, I want to show this, for existing customers, I want to show that, or Sahib, if it's subscribers versus non-subscribers, for example, then you can still test what you're showing for new people and what you're showing for existing. You don't have to pick one or the other. So if I just hop into any old slot, we have gone into email personalization, but it is exactly the same for all types of deployment. And we'll want to go to our rules. Now, hopefully you're familiar with the drag and drop interface, and that's exactly what we're going to be using. So here we have this WD trial into our yes. So this is the content we want to test with another piece. All we need to do is click on add smart blocks, find our content. So I'll just pick one of these. So we'll use Becky's one here. And if I grab that content and I drag it on top of the one I want to test, that's going to open up a randomization for me. And if I click on the header, here are my testing options. So if I want to do a split test, then I can pick what proportions I want to show. So, let's say you've had this block on your homepage since forever and you're a bit nervous about testing it. Maybe you're a bit nervous about that price affinity predictor. So actually, maybe you show that 20% of the time and then your other content 80% because you're not quite sure. Or 50-50 is obviously going to get you there a little bit quicker in terms of showing it. But that's there. So at this point, this is the tools that you have available within the standard package. So without the advanced optimization module, you can still do this. The next pieces are what are unlocked by the module. So that's automatically ending the test. So either on a date or after a number of impressions. So if I just pick a date, so maybe we want it to run for a week. And then I can pick my goals. The goals do vary a little bit depending on where you are in the system. So there are more goals for web because we can look at things like bounce rates and various other pieces. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in here in email, we can look at conversions, average order value, and increasing site visits. So essentially click-throughs there. So let's say what we want to do is actually we just want to drive as much traffic as possible to the website. Then this is going to see which piece of content does that most effectively. And on the 1st of June, it's going to say, put whichever one is winning, showing 100% of the time. Our other option is the multi-arm bandit. This one's a bit easier to set up because we only have to pick a goal because it's always going to be checking itself. So it will never end per se. And then again, we've got our goals here. And that is how easy it is to set up a test. You can click save. You'll find triggered emails work in the same way. So if you want to optimize your trigger programs, the same drag and drop and configuration options will exist for you there as well. Any questions about actually setting up the test?
No, seems all good so far.
Yeah, does that feel nice and easy, especially if you've not got to check in on the results? You can be throwing up as many recommendations as you want, really. You can put more than 2 variables in any of these as well. Well, there isn't a hard limit of how many there are, but obviously the more variations you have, it's either going to take longer to find the result, or well, yeah, it'd take longer really, unless you've got enough impressions that it'll be able to make the decision. That test could end up running for quite some time. So let's say if you've only got 100 visitors and you've put in 100 options, it's going to take you a real long time to figure out which of your 100 is best. Any questions?
Where do the reports go to? So how do you know which one? I know, understand the multi-armed one is a continuous one, but say the split A/B.
Beautiful segue for my last 2 minutes to the last bit of the session.
Sorry. Okay.
No, don't apologise. So on the left-hand side, we have our optimize center. So if I click in here, this is our handy place that holds all of your different tests and optimizations. So what you'll see is a list of all of the different ones you're running, when you've created them, what test type they are, and the actual content you're testing. So all of the information about all your tests is visible just within one glance, really. Then if I click on the 3 dots at the side, I can click onto this open report. And this is going to take me to a comparison report where we have one chart with the performance of both pieces of content on one screen. I'm in a demo environment, so obviously not a great example, but you would see some pretty charts that are all dancing around each other at the top here. What we have as well up here under current report, there's different metrics that you can review this on. So this is purchase value that you're dropped in by default, but you can look at the average order value as a result of each piece of content. You can be looking at, here we go, we can look at the purchase quantity as well. So is this having an impact of how many you buy? And the one that I always recommend using, particularly if you're looking at the multi-arm bandit, or if you're doing A/B tests not 50-50, then you want to be looking at the revenue per milli, because that's going to be taking into account how often you're showing that content as well as the ROI. If you look to, say you've got an 80-20 split, as you might imagine, you might get more ROI, you might be getting more revenue from the one that's being shown 80% of the time, but that doesn't mean it's performing better. It's just got more opportunity to get that revenue. We are on time, so I've not really left you much time for questions. I'm happy. I've got time to stay here, but yeah, is there anything that anyone else wanted to chat through?
I have no questions. I think pretty much most of what I wanted to get out of this has been answered. But yeah, once I've had an internal conversation, we can definitely catch up on anything that we might be missing out on.
Definitely. Danielle, anything from you? Has it been helpful?
It's been really helpful, but there's just so much. So I'm excited to kind of get my hands on it to have a go. And then I imagine I'll probably have a million questions. So yeah, I'll go away and have a go first and then get back to you.
Definitely. And we do offer optimization plans as well. So we can send you the page to that, and we'll tell you which 3 tests we think would be beneficial for you based on what you're trying to achieve. I guess today this is just a bit of a flavour of all, well, not even all. I had to really break down this list.
Daisy, actually, can I ask, the multi-arm bandit test, because it's continually running, how does that affect site speed?
So it's not running on your site, it's running in freshrelevance. So the load won't do anything different.
Because it's just continually pulling the data, it's just what it's doing with the data.
Yeah, so it's the decision of, do I show A or B, and it's constantly ticking over. So by the time that the next page hit goes, we've already decided what we're going to show to that. So there's no impact on page loads. Yeah.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, as always, drop us a note at customer success if you've got any questions. We'll send the recording and a couple of other pieces we think you'll be interested in. But otherwise, have a fabulous day, and I'm sure I'll be speaking to both of you very soon.